Hi folks, HR Funk back with Chapter 2 on how not to break a perfectly good AR-15. Truthfully, this isn't really a Chapter 2, it's more of a continuation of my video from a few days ago. If you saw that one, when I filmed it, I was in a little bit of a time crunch. I had a meeting to go to that evening, so I got home, I shot the video quick, and later on when I was doing the editing, I realized there were a few things that I meant to mention during the video that slipped my mind. So what I'm doing today is trying to rectify that situation and continue on with about 3 more things that I meant to mention in the first video. The first thing I want to talk about today is the safety. Now, I've had more than one fairly experienced police officer come up to me and tell me that the safety on their rifle is broken because they can't put the rifle on safe. One of the features of the AR-15 design, particularly in the lock work, is that the safety cannot be engaged unless the hammer is cocked. Right now the hammer is forward and it's in the fired position and you cannot put the safety on. This seems to be a Gene Stoner characteristic, by the way, because this is also the same on the AR-7, which he also designed. And on this rifle, as I demonstrated a moment ago, you can't put it on safe, but once the action is cocked, now the rifle goes on safe. We're on safe here. When we go back to fire, the rifle can be fired. If I try to put the safety on now with the hammer forward, it won't go forward. And if you try to force it, if you crank on that and push it and eventually get it to go, you're going to break something in the process. So if you try to put the safety on and it won't go, that just tells you that the hammer is down. Once the action is cocked, the rifle will go on safe. Next, I want to switch sides of the rifle and talk about the forward assist. The forward assist, as the name implies, is used to assist the bolt carrier forward to lock the bolt in place. It was something that was added to the AR-15 design when the M16 became the M16A1, and the reason it was added is because there were problems with the original rifles not going fully into battery, and unlike the M1 or the M14, there was no charging handle to push on to get the bolt to go all the way forward. So the forward assist was added for something to get the bolt to move forward into place. There is a problem, however, that can occur with using the forward assist, and the forward assist really should be considered an emergency option if you're trying to get around chamber. Reason being, if you have a cartridge that's slightly out of shape, slightly out of round, or some other problem with it, and it's not going into the chamber, and you use the forward assist to blast it in there, the cartridge case may not come out. You may have a failure to extract because it's jammed in there so tight. And if you try to pull it out, depending on how tight it's stuck, you might not be able to get it out. It might take something, a cleaning rod being forced in from the muzzle end and the casing driven out with a mallet in order to get that thing out of there. You are better off if you have the time. Now, in an absolute emergency, if you've got rounds coming in and you've got to get that thing closed so you can get up and get that shot off, that may be something you have to use. So again, this should be considered an emergency response option to a stoppage in your rifle. If you have a stoppage where the bolt fails to go fully forward or the cartridge fails to completely chamber in your rifle, rather than using the forward assist to blast that cartridge into the chamber, if you have the luxury of time, if you're behind cover or particularly on the range, you're better off to use the immediate action drill that you can remember with the acronym SPORTS. SPORTS stands for slap the bottom of the magazine, pull the charging handle, observe the ejection port, release the charging handle, tap the forward assist, and shoot. Let's look at each one of those actions individually to see exactly what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it. The first action is to slap the bottom of the magazine. The reason we're doing that is to make sure the magazine is fully seated. It could be the reason you had that stoppage is because the magazine is not all the way up where it should be and the bolt can't pick the cartridge up the way it should. When I did my original demonstration of the Sports Immediate Action Drill, I actually had this magazine down far enough that I could retract the bolt and release it in order to be able to demonstrate that without having the bolt lock open with the magazine empty. So the magazine will stay in there. In fact, it's not locked in now. It's just sitting in there. And I can pull it out without pushing the magazine release. So it's possible that this thing can be sitting in there, especially if you have some dirt or grit or something else on the magazine. It might have stayed in there for some time, and all of a sudden you go to chamber a round and you get a stoppage, or you get a round that doesn't get picked up at all. You just have an empty chamber. The first thing you're doing is slapping the bottom of that magazine to make sure that it's in place and properly orientated for the cartridges to be able to feed properly into the chamber. Next in our sports acronym is the P for pull the charging handle. Really, the reason we're pulling the charging handle is just to facilitate the O, which is observe the ejection port. What you're doing is looking in there to see if you can tell what's going on and what caused the stoppage and what you need to do to clear it. Obviously, if you've got a cartridge case sticking out of there, if you've got something else that needs to be dealt with in order to get the rifle running again, you can do that while you've got the charging handle back, and if you need to, you can lock the bolt open in order to be able to get in there, get that cleaned out, and then release the bolt again with a new cartridge and get back up, and you're ready to fire again. When we get to the R in sports, release the charging handle, remember the T is tap the forward assist. Now, we already discussed that really is only if it's an emergency situation and you've got to get that rifle running. If you have gone through a couple of cycles and you still can't get the bolt forward and you can't get ammunition to feed into the chamber, then probably there's a bigger problem with your rifle than you're going to be able to cure on the range. It's going to require some additional service. If it's a situation where you are defending yourself, and again, not an emergency, where you're using a forward assist, but if you can, that's the time to transition to a second weapon, because your rifle obviously has some kind of an issue that you're not going to be able to cure. So remember, the T for in sports for tap the forward assist is only for an emergency situation. If it's not an emergency, the rifle for some reason is not chambering ammunition, or the bolt's not going fully forward over and over and over again, time to stop and give the rifle some attention, see what the problem is, and get it corrected. And the last part of the sports acronym is shoot. That should be shoot if it's still justified, if you're in a situation where you're defending yourself, or shoot if the conditions on the range allow you to shoot. So don't get in such an immediate robotic rhythm of doing this thing that you come up and automatically start to fire no matter what. So one more time on sports. Slap the bottom of the magazine, retract the charging handle, observe the ejection port, release the charging handle, tap the forward assist if it's an emergency situation. If not, don't do it. And shoot if you're still legally justified, or if the range conditions are still safe for you to shoot. The last thing I meant to cover in my original video the other day is for people who are getting into building their own rifles. I see a lot of this on YouTube these days. A lot of people like to build rifles. They are fun to build. I enjoy building them myself. There's nothing quite like going out to the range with the rifle that you built, shooting it, having it shoot accurately, having it run reliably. There's a lot of satisfaction in that. However, one of the things you have to remember if you're building your own rifle, and I have seen this multiple times on YouTube, there are fixtures that you can get for your rifle that basically simulate the magazine. You put that down into a vise and you can set the rifle on it just like this. I have seen people install barrels with their rifle just on one of those fixtures secured in a vise. When they start to torque the barrel on, there is a lot of pressure that's now going onto your magazine well and your lower receiver when you do that. There's additionally stress that's going onto your pins and your upper receiver. Basically, your rifle is not properly supported, and you can crack your receivers from the torque when you're installing that barrel. The easiest thing to do, they make clamshell fixtures to hold your rifle safely and support the entire upper receiver in order for you to be able to install that barrel and not have to worry about damaging it while you're torquing down the barrel nut. So there you have it, folks, the 3 things that I neglected to cover in my first video the other day on how not to break your AR-15. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those below. And as always, until next time, good shooting. Bye-bye.